Even though the stakes have changed, and even though you are not going to literally die being excluded from a friend group or being left out of a program or not belonging to that program, your body still responds to rejection and exclusion as your life depends on it, because for thousands of years it did. So this is not a spiritual problem. This is a human problem. Welcome to The Kindred Journey, the podcast for the spiritually curious, the wounded, the wandering, and the wildly awake, where nervous system healing meets spiritual transformation, and where your identity is something you receive, not something you earn. I'm your host, Lesley. You don't have to have it figured out to belong here. Now, take a deep breath. You're in the right place. Let's go. Hey guys, welcome to the Kindred Journey podcast. I'm so happy that you're here with me today. Today we're going to talk about unbecoming. And I think this topic is so beautifully weaved into the content, especially after the last few episodes that we have talked about spirituality, we've talked about true identity, we've talked about embodiment and the nervous system. And so I think this is a key piece, and it kind of flows in from last week's episode. So if you didn't get a chance to check that one out, please go back and take a listen, because I'm going to talk a little bit about that episode in today's episode as well. And so I think it's so interesting because as I've been doing this work, or I've been unbecoming myself, I have noticed that, every single day we have a choice between choosing authenticity and we have a choice of belonging. And again, not a belonging to ourselves, not a belonging to our authentic self, or staying in integrity with self. And I think it's really sad to witness and see that 99% of the time, people choose belonging. I've experienced it. I've learned through some of my choices of belonging, because when we choose belonging, we act out of alignment with who we truly are. We act out of alignment with our beliefs, our value systems. It's a performance. You can shrink. You can contort yourself, checking boxes that you're never meant to check. Rebranding yourself completely into something that's more palatable or more acceptable or more safe. It's whether it's from the clothes you wear or how you style yourself or what you drive, or again, it can go deeper than that, of course, but it all is about belonging to something that was actually never meant to hold you or for you to be in. And again, I know because I did it. I experienced it for years, and it was at the cost of myself. Again, I feel like 2026, this year, is a really big box of unbelonging. And so today we're talking about sacred belonging and what it actually is, why we've been chasing a counterfeit version of it our whole entire lives, and how to unbecome your way to come home to the real thing. All right, let's dive in. So one of the last boxes that I ever officially checked was 2024, and I had joined a podcasting program. And the reason I joined, it really had nothing to do with the program itself. It had everything to do with the fact that this program checked my boxes that I wanted to belong into. I felt a little confused on my spiritual journey at the time, so I felt like it was safe. I felt like I belonged, and I felt like that this was my program. I felt like this was it. And what I didn't realize until I was deep inside this program, and I'm grateful for this lesson that I was able to experience this, was that there is a difference between sharing someone's faith and sharing someone's wiring, between belonging to the same God and belonging to the same methodology I talked in an earlier episode about how religion can sometimes divide more than it unites. Would you choose the best doctor for the surgery, or would you rather have the doctor that has the same beliefs as you? This is literally the living example of signing up for this program was. The program checked a box for me. And I spent months in this program, actually almost a whole year in this program, with resistance in my body that I continued to override, because that's what I had done for most of my life, was to continue to push through. And I did stop and question at one point, is this me? Am I resisting the program? Am I being a rebel? Like, am I making this harder than it needs to be? Am I being the difficult one? It was really a lot of questioning myself through this experience, and kind of, again, seeing how I could mold better to the box, or asking what I could do differently versus it just wasn't a good fit. And that is totally okay. And I have learned so much from this experience. And again, what I know now is that this resistance, it was a signal from my body. It was the wisdom that my body was telling me that I am not wired this way, to check boxes, to work through a process where this is what you do, and then you move on to this and this and this. This container was not mine to be in, and I did not belong to this container. And again, I did not have the language yet for this, but I wanted so badly to belong. I wanted to so badly do it this way. And I felt like I had found my people, which I hadn't. There were some wonderful women that I met in the program, so I'm grateful for the experience that it brought me. But I felt like I was on the right path. I had found, again, just continuing to check these boxes, and I kept trying to belong over and over again to something that my body already knew was not my vibrational match. And I don't know if any of you guys can relate to this, because in life in general, I have other examples from my early childhood or my youth childhood that I could also talk about. But this is the most recent one that feels the most alive to refer back to, because here we are again. The Kindred journey. For those of you who have been around for a little bit, you know that I actually did rebrand my podcast after going through this program. I originally received the name, the download, the Kindred journey. This was God-given to me. This was a seed planted, and I received it the first time I started the podcast. And this was the name that God gave me. And I changed it. I moved from the Kindred journey, and I moved to the Grounded Mama, something that was more structured, more palatable, more SEO friendly, more belonging, right? And I really struggled to mold myself into this box, into this structure of how the podcast outline, to the marketing, to the intro, to the outro, to all these things. And, the podcast program ended, and I was gladly happy not to renew. And again, here's the thing I shared. I want to take a moment and speak directly to you. If you have been listening to this podcast for a while, you already know that this work is not about having the right answers or following the right steps. It's about coming home to your body, to yourself, to who you actually are underneath everything that you have been carrying. I have opened an intimate amount of one-to-one coaching spaces, 12 weeks of deeply personal, somatic healing work that's built entirely around you and your season. No curriculum, no predetermined path, just sacred co-created space where your body leads and I hold the way. This is for the woman who has done the mindset work and still feels that something is unresolved. The one who knows something is ready to move, but does not quite trust it yet. If this is landing somewhere in your body right now, I want you to pay attention to that. The link to book a connection call is in the show notes. This is just a conversation. No pressure, no script. It's just us. feeling out together whether this is your next step, I would be so honored to walk alongside you. Let's get back to the show. This is not the first time that I have done this, not even close, because again, there are times in my youth where there were some big belonging lessons that was out of alignment with myself. And one of them was sneaking out as a teenager. And I did not want to sneak out. I did not want to go wherever it was that we were going, that I was being convinced to go to. And not because going felt worse, but it was the reason I chose the belonging versus the authenticity, because being left out was something that my body couldn't tolerate. So I went because I was peer pressured into going. And guess what? We got caught. And punishment from my friend's mother was way worse than any punishment I had received from my parents. And when my dad came to get me, he said, I think you've been punished enough for tonight. We're just glad that you're safe. We love you. We'll talk about this tomorrow. So for those of you who know the story. Anyways, we learned to perform early for belonging. And now that I'm a mother of children myself, this is very scary that I've witnessed it. And now I'm going to experience it again from the different lens. And I have so much more love and compassion for my parents now and the Heavenly Father than I have ever in my life, now that I am a parent myself. And again, most of us have been doing this so long that we don't even notice it anymore. It just feels like this is who I am. When in reality, this is who you become so you can feel safe. And again, this is part of this unbecoming, this being part of sacred belonging, where you actually feel like you belong, that is safe, that feels aligned. Because sometimes belonging can feel like survival, and it actually can be. So I want to talk to you about what performing for belonging can cost us. And I want to show you what it looks like when the performing stops and real belonging begins, because I have also lived that as well. And it looks nothing like what I expected. So belonging is hardwired into our DNA. So this is not a weakness that you want to belong. That's why rejection or rejection can feel like a threat to your survival, because it once was. So being okay with that, it is hardwired into our DNA. If you were kicked out of the tribe back in the day, you would die. So it's not coming from a place, belonging isn't coming from a place of neediness. It's not a character flaw. It's not being immature. It is literally one of the most ancient hardwired drives in our human nervous system. And again, it was that you were cast out if you didn't fit, if you broke the rules, if you were too much or not enough, if you were expelled. You would be exposed, and exposure meant death. So again, our nervous system has not forgotten this. And even though the stakes have changed, and even though you are not going to literally die being excluded from a friend group or being left out of a program or not belonging to that program, your body still responds to rejection and exclusion as your life depends on it, because for thousands of years it did. So this is not a spiritual problem. This is a human problem. And God, who made us human, made us this way on purpose. Genesis tells us it is not good for man to be alone, not as an afterthought, as a design declaration. God looked at a human being in a perfect garden, in unbroken relationship with God, and said, this is not enough. He needs community. He needs to belong to and with other people. We are not designed for isolation. And when we live in it by choice or by wound, or our body does respond. Our nervous system dysregulates, our cortisol rises, our immune system weakens, the body keeps score on loneliness, the same way that it keeps score on trauma. Belonging is not a want. It is a need. And God wired it into us this way. But here's where it gets complicated, Because when belonging feels like survival, we will do almost anything to secure it. We will perform, we will shrink, we will abandon our knowing, we will choose a methodology that doesn't fit our body because the person teaching it checks our box. We will rebrand ourselves into something smaller and more acceptable because the alternative, which is being fully ourselves, is we're risking rejection. That feels like a threat that our nervous system can't tolerate. And every time we do that, every time we choose performed belonging over our authentic self, we move a little bit further from who we actually are. Until one day we look up and realize that we have been living someone else's life in someone else's container, answering to someone else's version of who we should be. That's not belonging. That's just hiding in plain sight. So we're going to talk about this counterfeit belonging versus the real belonging, true belonging, sacred belonging. Fitting in and shape-shifting to match the container. Belonging is finding the container that was made for you. Those are not the same thing. And most of us have spent our whole lives doing the first one while calling it the second. Fitting in requires performance. It requires you to monitor. Am I too much right now? Am I not enough? Are they approving? Am I safe? It's exhausting. And it is lonely in a way that is hard to name because you're surrounded by people and you still feel completely unseen. Real belonging, the kind I experienced at Pam's table in the last episode, requires nothing from you except your actual self. It is the room where you don't have to translate yourself, where you don't have to check the box, and it is okay to take up some space, where your full identity, your wounds, and all your messes, everything, becoming and all, it's not just tolerated, but it's genuinely welcomed. That is what God designed community for. Not performance, not fitting, belonging. I want to go back to that moment that I shared in the last episode. And when I was sitting at Pam's table, I told you that I received my true identity in community with my friends. And I want you to understand why that matters for this conversation today. I didn't receive my true identity alone in my perfectly prepared quiet time, my space from 5 to 6 a.m., even though that's where I thought I was supposed to receive and where I thought it was supposed to happen. I received it in a room with two women who know me. They were safe. They didn't need me to be anything other than who I was in that moment. They didn't need me to perform. They didn't need me to show up as somebody else. They received me for who I was and who I am. That safety, that regulated, trustworthy, non-performing community, that created the conditions for God to speak to me to where I could actually hear it and I could also receive it. I couldn't have received it in the podcast program. The containers, it wasn't safe enough. The belonging was conditional on performance. And that's where a lot of us are living today, is belonging with conditional performance. At this table, this kitchen table, we were just there in our true identities, together, fully present, and God showed up in that space and he did something that I could not have received alone, let alone he deliver it to me alone. Again, community is such a gift. I'm so grateful for the community that I have built over the years. And that's the power of genuine community. Community built on shared religion or shared methodology or maybe a shared aesthetic. That's not belonging. Community built on truth-telling and shared safety and shared becoming. That's genuine community. In genuine community, everyone is living in their true identity, and they all belong because of their true identity, not because they earned it, but because belonging is what happens when the performing stops. And I want to tell a little story that happened today, divinely. This story happened divinely today. I am here recording in studio today, and I almost booked this studio for the following week. And the beautiful woman that I met that is here, the studio coordinator, this week's her last week. So I wouldn't have met her if I would have booked the following week. And we both have a passion and a fire for community. And I am so excited to receive this new connection that God has given me because I chose today versus next week. And so I'm attuned to the invitations. I'm attuned to the communal invitations that God wants to bring me. And invitation for you to maybe reflect on if real belonging is waiting on the other side of everything that you perform to fit in. And if I would have tried to check more of a structured box, I would be here next week. But I chose this week because that's what felt aligned. And I met her through this experience. So again, I feel like I am so excited to see where we can maybe collaborate in the future and connect in community in the future. And I think it's really important that this message was received today. And I received this experience today. And I want to talk directly to someone right now. And I'm going to get deep here for a second. This is why I'm here. The person that I want to talk to directly right now, you know who you are. You are the one who feels too far gone. The one who has tried everything. The therapy, the programs, the religion, the self-help. And it still feels like something is missing. The one who has been told directly or indirectly that you are too much or not enough or too broken or too complicated to belong anywhere. I want you to hear this clearly. I have left the 99 to come find you. Not metaphorically, not as a brand statement, but as a calling. The woman who feels most outside, most unwanted, most unworthy of a seat at any table, she is exactly who this space was built for. You do not have to have it together to belong here. You do not have to be further along. You do not have to perform your healing before you're allowed to receive it. There is a seat at the table here for you. There always has been. And I believe with everything that I am that you were not an accident who found this podcast. You were led here, breadcrumb by breadcrumb, by the one who has been pursuing you this entire time. I started this return by telling you that I disappeared for a while. My first episode at the beginning of this month, that dropped on April 2nd. I told you I went into the cocoon. That was 2025. That was the year of metanoia for me. The complete transformation of mind, heart, and direction for me. And I want to close out this month by telling you what I know now that I couldn't see then. The podcast program I left, that was not a failure. That was me finally choosing authenticity over performed belonging. That was my nervous system, my body, and my God-given wiring saying, not this, not here, and not this way. The name I went back to, the Kindred Journey, that was not a rebrand. That was a homecoming. Back to the name that God gave me before I tried to make it in for something that was acceptable. And every woman in this space, every one of you who has found your way here, you are not here by accident. You have been wayfinding your way to this table, even when you didn't know it. Even when the littlest shift, you didn't recognize it. Even when maybe your path looked like loss or confusion or starting over, or maybe even disappearing for a while. The cocoon was not a detour. It's the becoming. Welcome home. I'm so excited that you're along this journey with me. I can't wait to share what I have to share with you. From my cocoon phase, I can't wait for you to experience God maybe the way that you have not yet experienced him. And before we close, I want to just give you one more thing to carry with you. Think about the last time that you performed for belonging. Maybe the last time that you made yourself smaller, more acceptable, to fit into a space that maybe wasn't for you. And now I want you to ask yourself, full body ask, what would it feel like to stop? Not to find new people first, not to have it figured out first, just to stop. To stop performing and let yourself be exactly who you are. And trust the belonging that finds you on the other side. That's the real kind. You have been wayfinding your whole life, and every step, even the ones that feel like detours, have been leading you here. You belong here, not because you earned it, but because you showed up. If this episode or any of the first few episodes of the Coming Home series feels like you're coming home to something that you've been looking for, I would love for you to do one thing. I would love for you to share this episode with the woman in your life that is still performing, who is still trying to fit, who doesn't know yet that there's a space that was made exactly for who she actually is. You might be the breadcrumb that leads her here. And again, come find me on Substack, where I'm publicly writing my book. It's being written in real time, and I'd love to have you along for the journey. It is a community. It is a sacred belonging. And the link is in the show notes. I'll see you in the next episode, and I can't wait for you to bring your whole self. Have a great day. Thank you for meeting me here. If this episode met you somewhere real, the most generous thing that you can do is share it with one woman in your life who is wandering, curious, or quietly longing for more. She might not even know she's looking for this yet. And if you have a moment, leaving a 5-star review helps more women find their way to this space. And that is part of the healing too. I'll see you next Thursday.